Hi, my name is Rachel, and today I'm proving that no, I don't hate everything I read. Today I'm actually doing book recommendations. I asked on Instagram if anybody had any specific requests for a recommendation, and so many people did. So I decided to there were too many to do on Instagram. So I just decided to turn this into a video. So the first one was horror or thriller that's deep and makes you think. So one of my favorite books of last year was All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, which is about a guy named Titus who is the sheriff of his small county. It's a smaller area, and he used to work for the federal government, and you learn later why he no longer does. A local teacher turns out to have been serially sexually abusing and murdering kids, but the video evidence of this shows two men involved, the teacher who was murdered and another guy who wears a mask. This is one that is deeply about religious trauma, and also there are some super racist people in this county, and there's a lot of tension there that boils over. This is a small southern town with a lot of very racist people. So Titus, who is a black man, has to deal with that while trying to solve this case. It was very emotionally impactful. It had a lot of depth to it. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. It was one of my favorite books of last year. The next one is I read Piranesi off your rec. Yes, so good. And it changed my life, so I will happily take another. So for this, I recommend 2 different things. If you liked the weirdness and the writing and like the haunting discussions about isolation in Piranesi, I would highly, highly recommend checking out Julia Armfield's Our Wives Under the Sea, which is about these 2 women. You get both perspectives. They are a married couple, and one of them, she goes under the sea for an expedition for her job, and when she comes back very different. And both of them in certain ways are dealing with isolation, even though when the wife returns after dealing with isolation under the sea, both of them are isolated in their own ways. This has a like speculative element to it, sort of like how Piranesi also has kind of a magical little speculative moment there. And also Our Wives Under the Sea is weird. It's a weird book, but it's a haunting book in a similar way to how Piranesi sort of haunts me. If you liked the oddness and charm of Piranesi, but want something like a smidge happier with your contemplation, I would say try Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is about this cafe where if you go through this particular ritual and sit at a certain seat, you sort of get to travel back in time. And it made me cry at the end. I'm not going to tell you anymore. Just do it. Just read it. Somebody asked for an urban fantasy book recommendation. I would say look no further than The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, one of my favorite books of all time. This is about a group of people who have to come together to form the soul of a city to fight off a sort of parasitic evil in the form of this really creepy lady. There's worms. If you know, you know. If not, read it and find out. Horrifying. And while all of these people are sort of part of this like collective soul that represents the soul of New York, they also are individuals who you fall in love with along the way. They were never supposed to be like this group of people that would have met otherwise, and it's really fascinating to think about that. So it's set in New York. They're fighting off evil. All the different bureaus of New York have like a different person who represents that different piece of the soul. It's really fascinating. I think that's probably like the best urban fantasy book that I've ever read in my life. I read one that has some odd parallels to it, not exact, like the soul of the city thing is not there, but Scott Westerfield had an urban fantasy book that had like a worm thing going on as well, and singing. Very weird book, but I read that a while ago, and I think that my enjoyment of that in high school led to me being like ready as an adult to read The City We Became and just eat it up. Any recs for a really satisfying feminine rage read? Bonus points if it's highly destructive. Oh yeah, so one that I think is feminine rage and highly destructive is Gear Breakers by Zoe Hanamakuta. It's also sapphic. If you liked Iron Widow, you should read Gear Breakers. It has a similar thing going on where we have these like big mechanical structures that people run on the inside, and a very angry girl is our main character, although this has 2 main characters, and also it has a side main character. It has a side character who is also very angry. We have Sona, who intentionally infiltrated the big mechanical structures are called wind-ups. Sona infiltrated in order to destroy the wind-up program and destroy Godolia, the nation that they live in. And then our other main character is Eris, who is a young rebel called a gear breaker. And the gear breakers specialize in going inside of the windups and taking them down from the inside. When in the capital they meet, they sort of team up and they form like a bond with each other. But Sona is not as well loved by everybody in the gear breakers as Eris, cares about Sona, because Sona is cybernetically enhanced. I love that book. I loved that book. So if you're looking for angry young women, look no further than Gear Breakers. Somebody asked for adult sapphic romance books, and obviously I have to recommend the staple. Hi, it's occurring to me right now that this recommendation didn't say other genres other than romance. My mind went to who's two sapphics in an adult book that I love, and I went straight to Gideon the Ninth, bypassing the fact that this person did not ask for a rec for sci-fi or fantasy. Sorry about that. Apparently, when you ask me for sapphics, I immediately go towards fantasy and sci-fi books. I don't know what happened there, but that's where my brain went. So like I'm trying to think of any book right now that is just a contemporary romance, and I'm losing. I'm not thinking of any, which is bonkers. If I went through my Goodreads, I could probably find one. But the point is, I didn't do that. My brain immediately went to Gideon the Ninth. Sorry about that, but apparently that's where my brain goes if you ask me for sapphic romance. I don't know what that says about me. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. It was described when it was coming out, everybody was like losing it because it was described as lesbian necromancers in space. That turned out to be very true. But also there's like a murder mystery plot, and it's not like nice lesbian necromancers in space. Hera is very mean. And honestly, she could step on me. My one gripe with this is, and it's so little because what it does is so tremendous. My one gripe with this is that I didn't understand it, but I could fix that by rereading it and trying to take copious notes, I think, which I will when the series ends. When she comes out with the final, I will take my time and go through, and I will fully comprehend everything that's going on here. But if lesbian necromancers in space sounds good to you, I cannot recommend harder. Also, if you like Arcane, you should read Gideon. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm not ready to talk about Arcane, actually. I don't know that I'll ever be ready. Okay. Any recommendations for fucked up horror? Absolutely. This one's also sapphic. The last 3 in a row have been sapphic. This doesn't end well. But it is sapphics nonetheless. To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger is disgusting. There's like eating live animals, nasty stuff with bugs, eating carcasses. It's nasty. This is a nasty book. My review of it is just, it's disgusting. I love it. It's about a woman who is afraid to tell her partner how absolutely fucked up the inside of her head is, and she really desperately wants to know what it's like to be a vulture. She sees vultures circling in the sky, and she's like, I just want to know what it's like to be them, to eat dead things and exist as they do. And I'm like, but why? Why do you want to know that? No. But she finds out. It's very short. You could read it in an hour, probably. I did. You might regret it, but also I think you'll thank me. Both at the same time? Find out. Let me know. What's a book that will break my reading slump? Oh my gosh. Okay, so my recommendation for this is if you are in a reading slump, try an absolutely outrageous work of nonfiction. And my recommendation for this is There Is No Ethan by Anna Akbari, which is about Anna and 2 other women's experiences dealing with an online catfish named Ethan, who catfished, they don't even know how many women over the course of a decade. Just an absolutely bonkers story. You are going through the emails between these women and Ethan and seeing the parallels and seeing how manipulative Ethan is. And the whole time you're like, no, this is a real guy, right? Nobody would like do this to somebody. Like, he's going to show up and he's going to explain his actions and it'll be fine. It was not fine. And I think it had really interesting conversations on like stealing from other people, not so much in like what we steal from people in monetarily, which Ethan never stole anything from these women, but he stole so much of their time, and you have to wonder why. And then you find out who Ethan is, and it's horrifying. So it turns out that that person is a doctor who is still practicing. What fantasy book do you think has the most unique and coolest magic system? I mean, it's hard to narrow down. Like I could do a whole video on different ones, but the first one that comes to mind is one that I read when I was first getting into like BookTube. It was recommended by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. She talked about Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. I love this magic. I love it. This is a world where objects can be scribed. So you use this particular language from these sort of like deity-like figures in order to scribe this language onto an object, and then the object will do something that it shouldn't be able to do on its own. So you can scribe a lantern to make it so that the lantern thinks that it is floating, when in reality the only reason it's able to float is because this magical language tells it to. I love that magic system. I love that series, books 1 and 2, so good. I was so devastated though by how book 2 ended that I still never continued on to book 3. I was so mad at what happened to a certain character. I was like, no! I refuse. Anyway, can you tell that I didn't like it? Don't have any strong feelings on it or anything. Your favorite fantasy of the year. Oh, so this year, this past year, 2024, I did a video on this, but my favorite fantasy book was definitely The Gilded Crown by Marian Gordon. That was such a delight. So I think my favorite magic usages, my favorite types of magic are, unfortunately for me, shadow magic, because all of these the popular romantasy books are ruining it for me. Just once, can we give a woman some shadows? I feel like it wouldn't be so cringy if it wasn't a man doing it every time. I still love shadow magic. I have done a video talking about shadow magic before. My other favorite, my number one favorite, I've already mentioned it in this video, it's necromancy. I love necromancy. And one that was really impactful on me this year because it was like a book that was tailored exactly to my specifications was The Gilded Crown. So we have a necromancer who is sapphic. There is a personification of death that she has conversations with. She has religious trauma mommy issues, and also she has a magical animal companion in the form of a raven. That is like, that ticks every box for me. It's like a darker fantasy, and I love how she really feels like good about herself using the necromancy. There's something really delicious about that. Best book for someone deconstructing. So it depends on like what sect, I guess, or even what religion you're deconstructing from. But if we're talking about specifically the religion I grew up in, I recently started, I have not finished, but I recently started, but the beginning of Jesus and John Wayne has been so helpful for me in putting into perspective, taking out like the fear from, I really believed for, hold on, let me explain. I really believed for so long that the religion I followed was right and bad things would happen if I didn't follow exactly the religion that I was following, which is highly specific. It is not a European version of fundamentalist Christianity. It is very highly specific to United States evangelical, Protestant, and if you want to get even further specific, Assemblies of God, fundamentalist Christianity. That I believed if I did not believe this specific idea that I was going to hell, that bad things were going to happen to me, to my future kids, all of this stuff, right? And so having the history of how this stuff came to be, all of these different pieces of the culture of that specific sect I grew up in broken down and seeing it for what it is has been even further helpful, because even now to this day, I still wonder, is it all real and I have shirked this belief only to end up in hell? I still think about it all the time. And so having it all sort of broken down at the beginning of Jesus and John Wayne, where it's like, this is just a culture you grew up in. This is not a real thing. This is just a culture, is so helpful to me. I'm not saying that the Christian God is not real, or that Christianity is not a real belief system or not a valid belief system. You can believe whatever you want. I'm happy for you. I'm saying that the sect that I grew up in was so highly specific and I thought was the only right, real thing. And instead it's just a collection of like historical moments that led to this sect being a thing, and I don't have to follow it. It's not a real thing. You don't have to stay there. You're not going to hell over it. So Jesus and John Wayne, I don't know if any of that made sense. It's really hard to articulate. Most anticipated book of next year. I can tell you one that I started that I'm really excited for y'all to get your hands on. Because the writing is so beautiful. I'm not that far in, I'm only about 12% in, but the writing is so magical. And especially because I've read so much like mediocrity very recently. I gave a lot of things like 2 to 3 stars, and I've been like, it's been disappointment after disappointment, especially because I'm reading something now that I thought I would give 5 stars and it's turning out to be like a 2, and I'm really bummed about it. We'll talk about that later. The point is, this is a breath of fresh air, and it is The Unmapping by Denise S. Robbins, which is coming out next year or this year. Oh my God, it's 2025. It's coming out in June of this year, and like I'm reading it and I'm like, finally some good fucking food. This is set in the United States. There's a hurricane coming and it's actually going to hit New York City. There's also a city in the Midwest that experienced an unmapping, which is every day at 4 a.m. the city rearranges itself. And you can imagine that this causes a lot of freaking problems. Nobody really took it seriously because it happened over in the Midwest. Who cares? It's just some random people in some small town. Well, then it starts happening in New York City. You know, it feels like when what's happening in New York City in this book is sort of like what happens when you get COVID and your period at the same time. Just absolutely fucked, right? So a bunch of people are missing, power grid is ruined, and our main characters are Esme and Arjun, and they work for the city of New York for like emergency disaster response. In the background, they have like personal stuff going on. Esme has some stuff going on with her kind of shitty fiance. I don't understand why he lets his mother treat her so badly. Esme and I are in the same boat as far as having shitty mother-in-laws. What a terrible thing for us to have in common. I haven't gotten that far in, but I can tell you that the attention to detail here and the calling attention to like all these smaller stories, not just like the big plot of what are Esme and Arjun doing for disaster response, but like the smaller details of what happens to like just a regular person when the unmapping happens, I think is really beautiful. Like the shifting of perspectives is really, really masterfully done here. And just again, in general, the writing is so good. So I'm really excited about finishing it this year, and I'm excited for everybody else to read it. A non-trash romantasy with an actual likable love interest. Okay, so I had a whole conversation. I probably could do a video on my conversation I had with my friends about this recently. But here's the thing is, I feel like, I don't even know where to begin talking about this. I feel like all of us collectively have different definitions of what romantasy is. And I thought that it included several different sort of branches. But the way that, like somebody recently in my comments was like, if you hate romantasy so much, then why do you read it? I'm like, I don't think that, I don't think that we're on the same page here. I do like romantasy, or at least I thought I liked what I thought was romantasy. I'm just realizing that actually 2 people in a row said an actually good, not cringy romantasy. So how are we defining romantasy? Because I thought what romantasy was secondary world fantasy, included some or a lot of magic. The story cannot exist without the romance element. Fine, I like romance. So if those things are what we consider to be romantasy, then The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia is a romantasy. No, it's secondary world. It has some magic, and the romance is the plot. Like the plot cannot exist without the romance. But then somebody said, I think what you're pointing out here is historical fantasy. And I said, well, is historical fantasy with heavy romance as like doing the work as the plot not part of romantasy? Is that its own categorization? And if so, why? So if you're asking me, do I like romantasy? I think I do, but some people would not consider what romantasy books I like to be romantasy books. They will consider them historical fantasy books that have heavy romance element. I don't know, which is weird because I feel like one of the most popular romantasy books is Divine Rivals, right? And so if I'm to look at Divine Rivals, it's a secondary world. There is some magic. It's not super heavy in the plot. The meat of the book is the romance. That is also true for The Beautiful Ones, which is one of my favorite books of all time, that I would consider under, like, if Divine Rivals is romantasy, then why is The Beautiful Ones not? Genuine question. I don't know. But if we're gonna consider them like one romantasy and not the other, like I'm gonna consider The Beautiful Ones to be a romantasy. Unless romantasy has like a hyper specific definition that somehow Divine Rivals falls under and The Beautiful Ones doesn't, which if it does, then I don't know it. Now, there was a romantasy book that I read this year that I didn't think was bad. I'm also not saying that it's good. I don't know. All I can tell you is that I enjoyed my time with it. I don't have anything to say about it. I just enjoyed it, which was The North Wind. I don't have anything to say. I just enjoyed it. I don't know. Some people on the internet are telling me, why can't you just read with your brain off or something along those lines? And I'm like, I guess maybe I did for that book. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I just read it and I had no thoughts other than this is a book that I'm reading. I don't hate it. And it's like every other like Beauty and the Beast retelling where, you know, she gets whisked away except she went in the place of her sister. So I thought that one was fine. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I liked it. I think what I should probably do is ask around, what is romantasy? What exactly makes that genre a genre? Like, what are the parameters that a book has to fit into in order to be called a romantasy? And then try to make recommendations based on that. Obviously, there are really popular romantasy books right now, and a lot of them, yeah, I don't like them, but I don't think that that means that I don't like the genre. I think that it just means what it means. There are a lot of popular books that I didn't end up liking. I just have different tastes than a lot of what sells, apparently, which is fine. But there's a lot of books that I think would fall under whatever parameters we're going to set for romantasy that I would say are like some of my favorite books. I still think that The Beautiful Ones counts because I don't really see why historical fantasy that is romance-centered would not be considered a romantasy. But we can talk about that another time. Leave your specific requests down below. I'll try to do more of these in the new year. So leave your, I need a recommendation for fill in the blank down below. If you made it this far into the video, leave a gear for Gear Breakers because now I really want to reread it. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to. I'll see you next time. Bye. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons are Alexander, Andy, Ashley H, Astra, Brittany Bobitney, Call Me Kodiak, Cami, Chocos, Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric D, Jess, Joel White, John E, K, Kaleno K, Casey McKenzie, Katie M, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Another Lex, Lily, Mataraptor, Max B, Megwin Rose, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlett, Spoopy, Steph Bowen, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, I love that name, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And last but not least, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my potato starch Marxists, and those are Alejandra, Alicia Needs a Nap, Alistair, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ballads of Bookends, Beck, Blythe, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Kate B, Caitlin, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Catherine, Kathy, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Desiree Michelle, Dorothea, Is Not Like Other Girls, Drive By Thinker, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Fiona, Gadarn, Gilf Enthusiast, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Harpy Curo, Helen P, Harising, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jello Salad, Jen Michelle, Gender Queer, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kai, Catherine, Katie, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Maddie, Madison, Man Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, Mentally Unwell, May, Mima Who, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Pandemonium, Paul, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Pandemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca, Rebecca R, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Rowan, Sakoria, Sadie, Saintbringer, Sakyalume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie L, Stardust, T Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today, Trash Can Teddy, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, Wobbs, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.